Let's go through a little thinking exercise called extraction. I made this up, but I'm going to take a topic in this series of videos that I do as like a way to stay more consistent with making videos. When I take a concept, let's say, or an object or whatever it is, so like a fire pit or a Roman statue, like that's the one for today, or a water bottle. And we talk about what is the wisdom that we can extract from this concept, like down to the last detail. And over the course of like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I'll just think about it. And then I'll come on here and actually say what I've thought of, right? And then through the comments, we can keep talking through this. And this will serve as an example, a metaphor, a source of content for my book in the future. But let's get right into it. Imagine you were a Roman statue. What are the reasons you would want to be a Roman statue? Why is that appealing? So I was thinking through this question, and the first thing that comes to mind is like a Roman statue. It starts off as this block of potential, let's say. And within this block of marble, you have billions of possibilities. You could be anything. As an artist, you have to choose, what do I want to shape this piece into? And that's probably the most difficult part. So you have to set a constraint on it, because with the massive amounts of potential, you have to choose one path for it to be worth anything, or else it's just a block of marble, right? So the artist's task is to decide. And so then let's say they decide they're trying to make a statue of a Roman philosopher. And so then they're carving away at the statue. So one reason why you'd want to be a statue is that you could shape your dream, you could shape your life to be whatever it is that you want it to be, right? That's the first one, is that you start out with this massive block of potential and you can shape it down to whatever it is you want to be. But when you get there, here's the catch. You can shape it to whatever you want it to be, but then it's set in stone, right? You have to, let's say you carve out this beautiful statue of a Roman philosopher, right? And it's like, wow, that thing is just amazing. It's just really cool to look at. Well, it's set in stone. There's no changing it, right? And if you do change it, it gets smaller. And then you have to go within the confines of what you've already set in place. So it's difficult to imagine that with a person. Let's imagine this with a square. You go from this rectangular thing down to like a cube, right? And then you're like, well, I like this cube, but I want it to be a little bit different. And so you've cut off a bunch of the stuff, and now you're like, let's shape it down to a sphere, right? And so you cut off all the corners, and then the shape gets a little bit smaller, right? So you went from this rectangle down to this cube down to this sphere. And then you're like, I don't really like that. Let me make it a pyramid. And then you go down to a pyramid, right? And so you just shape off those corners, or like those round edges, make it a pyramid of sorts. And you have a little bit smaller of a shape, but it's still pretty big. It's like, I don't really like that. Let's go down to an octagonal, whatever that thing is called. And just keep shaping it down until finally this massive block of marble is left with just a marble, just a tiny little sphere. And so I feel like we do that with our dreams. When you're 20 years old, you decide, some people, what you want to do in life. Most people have no idea. They just have a block of marble and they never do anything with it. They're just slowly chipping away, and then one day it's just this blob, and they're like, yeah, looks pretty good. To me, it's still a block of marble, right? It's not a beautiful statue. For me, in my life, I want to, at 20 years old, or I guess 22 this next year, I want to have a beautiful statue carved out of what my dream life could be, right? And then I want to go out there and actually try to pursue it. These things are set in stone, and I'm going to wholeheartedly commit my life to the things that I've set in place right now. Because I know that right now, in the next year or two, I might not be able to accomplish them, right? But 20 years, 30 years down the road, definitely. Without a doubt, it's possible. Okay, so those are some of the benefits. And last part on that is that if you change your dream too often, you lose your most valuable resource, which is time. And so then that's the whole metaphor of, whittling down from this massive block of marble down to this tiny marble, is that if you change your dream too much, your possibilities are not endless because you've lost time. So you've sunk time into other things, and that's the marble that you're shaping off each and every time. It's the potential that exists to you, because over time, since that's your most valuable asset, you're losing out on the ability to go after these dreams. If that makes sense, right? You have this massive block of potential when you're really young, but when you're 80 years old, you can't really, there's not much you could do. I mean, maybe if you're really, in shape and very healthy and you've lived a long, fruitful life, you can squeeze out another 20 years at that point. So maybe there is time, right? But when you're on your deathbed, that block of potential is down to not much, right? And that's where the whole thing with lasting impact comes into place, which we'll talk about a different day. Okay, so those are some of the benefits. What are the other benefits? When you're made out of marble, when you're a Roman statue, you last for thousands of years, right? And so you could imagine the difference between making yourself out of a clay pot versus making yourself out of marble. So they're very similar, right? They're very hard substances, and like you've used them to make art and all these different things. But the difference is that with marble, you start with a block, and within that block exists what you want, right? And then you have to chisel it down to get to that spot. With clay, you could always add on, and you can always change it and mold it, and it's just not as impressive to me if you make a clay statue as it would be if you would have made a marble statue, because you have a constraint over here. With this one, the clay is not as strong. It could break. You could always add on more stuff. And so then if you make a mistake, you could cut it off and do it again. And to me, it's more impressive that with marble, it takes a lot more time. But if you take off material, that's it. You can't just put it back on, right? It's gone. So then you have to be super precise from the get-go. You have to be excellent, but it'll last a lot longer. Okay, so that's another benefit, is that it's made out of rock, and so it's super hard, it's long-lasting. And another thing is that I like this, Jordan Peterson, he's a YouTube clinical psychologist, very famous public figure. If you haven't heard of him, go check him out, but you probably have heard of him. Anyways, especially if you're watching a YouTube channel like this, he likes to say that the best wisdom, or like the pursuit of life, the adventure of a lifetime, is to rediscover the wisdom of the past by searching for your father in the belly of the beast. That's like his whole thing. So then, like, what does that mean? Like, you have to learn what previous generations have learned, and either from reading books or from talking to elders or whatever it is, like, or going through experience, the adventure aspect. You have to have the adventure of a lifetime to live out your life's purpose, is one of the meanings of that whole thing. Regardless, I like this concept of marble is untouched. It's underground, it's buried, you have to extract it. You got to pull it out of the ground. It's a very difficult process. And I think that's the same thing with wisdom, is that you have to put yourself out there. You got to do some really difficult things to earn that wisdom, right? I think back to my 100 Colleges in 100 Days tour, back about a year and a half ago, at the start of 2022. Wow, about 2 years ago. I did this tour to 100 colleges throughout the United States. Every Power 5 school, every major college that exists in the lower 48, right? And so I was traveling around, and I had this grand vision of what I wanted it to be. And I kept adding things on, right? Like a clay pot. But I didn't take the time to stress test that. I didn't take the time to put it in the kiln, or whatever it is you want to say. And so when I was actually on the college tour, it all fell apart, right? The weight of responsibility collapsed because the base wasn't strong. Okay, so then I learned in that experience that there's a lot more that has to be done, right? In order to ensure a good, successful idea, execution of an idea. So, and among other things that I learned, like, don't bite off more than you can chew, or, I mean, honestly, that's a whole video in itself that I needed to sit down and write out what are the things that I learned from this experience. But regardless, it was a very difficult process. I had to raise up the money, and then I spent money that I didn't have, and then I came back and I had to pay off the money. And just, long story short, there was a lot of wisdom that I earned by going out and doing that difficult process of traveling around, putting myself out there, being uncomfortable, talking to people I didn't know constantly. And it really forged who I am today, right? And that's the concept of going out there, having the adventure of a lifetime, and extracting that wisdom. And so that's stuff that I'll carry with me, and I'll do a video on that too. the more in-depth details come to light. That's just the general idea. But I like the concept of marble. It's buried underground. Clay is just mud. You can get it from the surface, and it can be tampered with, pesticides or whatever it is, gas and all the terrible things that we put into the environment nowadays, which is fine because we need it to exist. It's a catch-22. But regardless, marble is untouched. It's buried underground. It's made up of the elements of the past, right? I really like that. Some other things about marble, I was going for hours. So once you've made this marble statue, there exists within it the possibility to do anything else, right? So basically, but you want to keep it as the marble statue. It's more beautiful as a statue than it is as a million little pieces. You just have to, it's nice to have that knowledge that you're capable of doing a million things, right? So this is kind of like a decisiveness thing. So earlier when I was saying that you could shape a rectangular prism down to a cube, down to a sphere, down to a pyramid, all the way down to a small little marble, right? If you think about that same concept, in a marble statue, there exists a million little marbles. Okay, so one marble by itself that's been shed off all the other stuff, and now it's all dust or little fragments all on the ground. That's not really worth much. It's just worth one marble, right? And you kind of wasted all this potential just to have that one little thing. But imagine that was your goal from the get-go. You made you made 1,000 marbles from one massive block of marble, right? That's worth something. It's worth 1,000 marbles. Okay, well then maybe if you had just kept those marbles in that block, right, and then just always knew that that was one of the things that you could do, but you just never pursued it. You just had that knowledge that you were capable of doing something like that. But instead you chose to do something greater, then that's the ultimate value of those 1,000 marbles that you could have made. You see what I mean? When you keep this massive vision at hand and you commit your life to that instead of to all the small little things that you could have done, right? You're saying no to all these small things that might distract you, and you're saying yes to commit your life to this massive, massive vision. Well, then you still contain all of the potential for all these things, and you have that confidence in yourself that I could have done any of that. And so I look at my life, right? I'm committing myself to a lot of really big things. I'm taking on a huge amount of responsibility for myself just to live up to that full potential, because I know I'm capable of more. I know I'm not built to just exist or just live out a mediocre life. I'm meant to do amazing things. That's who Wyatt Moss is, right? And so I take on this responsibility of, by the end of my life, I want to impact billions of people. By the end of my life, I want to have a wedding with 100,000 guests, right? I want to make $100 million, whatever it is, like all these massive things that I have for myself. It's fine if I don't achieve any single one of them, right? But, well, maybe I'm getting a little bit off track. What was I trying to say with this? Those are the things that I want to do. That's the marble statue that I'm committing my life to, right? It's that beautiful, massive goal that takes a long time to form. But I know that at any point in time, I could go out and go to college, get a degree. I could go out and work as an accountant and be the best one in the branch. I could even own my own accounting company. I love numbers. I could be an investment banker. I could go on Wall Street and move money around, right? These are all the things I know I could do. But to me, they're all marbles, because each and every one of these paths would take around the same amount of time as achieving this massive vision for myself. Elon Musk is just as old as any accountant, right, that works for him, but he had a massive vision from the start, whereas they were just going through the motions. They're the same age. It took the same amount of time to get where they are. He just decided to say up front that he was not going to accept anything less than the best. And that's the spot where I'm at right now. These 1,000 marbles that every single one of them I could do, and I really could be the shiniest, most beautiful marble at any individual one of them. I'm going to say no to every single one of those. And I know that the 1,000 marbles that I could have been all exist within this massive marble statue that I'm making for myself, right? The potential still exists within me to do any of those things. At any point in time, I could drop out of this massive vision and go do those. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say no to those things. I'm going to have the confidence that I could do any of them and be the best at any single one of those. And yet I'm still going to commit my life to being the marble statue. A marble statue is in a museum. A marble is in a drawer. Which one do you want to be? Maybe I should write a book about this because I'm really hyped about this whole topic. But that was the first extraction. So we're going to do another one sometime soon here about a fire pit. Because I was watching a fire last night and boy, did I get fired up. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Why not us?